So, welcome everyone to the Mobilise Podcast. We have a exceptional podcast in store for you today with a couple of very, very special guests. At least they think they are anyway. We'll see how it goes throughout the podcast. Mo and Per, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We've got a really, really interesting topic to talk about today, which is Superapps. And the title of the podcast is The Next Evolution of Connectivity. So everyone might be a new listener to the podcast. My name's Hamish White. I'm the CEO and founder of Mobilise. And I would like maybe Per and Mo just to give a couple of minutes introduction from your guys' side.
I'm Kristoffersen. I'm the commercial officer in Mobilise. I do a lot of work on the commercial side of things, sales, bit of marketing, pricing strategies, bit on the product strategies with Mo as well, I guess, but mostly the commercial topics and a lot of work with the clients. Long background in the telco industry, SIM card industry, IoT industry, but since we're probably going to be talking a lot about eSIMs today, then let's leverage on my SIM or eSIM knowledge from the past 25 years, I guess.
Thanks, Per. Mo, far away.
Thank you, Hamish. I am Waheed, head of products at Mobilise. I work with, as Per mentioned, as a part of the commercial side, pre-sales. That would be part of what we do in the product department. The other part would be product strategy, product development, road mapping, and so on. I have 15 years mixed experience in telecom and software development, especially software products, of course. And we've been doing interesting stuff recently at Mobilise, which can fall under the eSIM topic, and also for tech enthusiasts. I think we have done some pretty interesting stuff to narrow the gap between the tech and telecom.
Thanks, Mo. I think what you guys have both missed off your introductions is you're both really big strategic thinkers. I think you've both got really good thoughts about the future of telecoms, about where we're going, and how that translates into kind of products, and what our product strategy is within Mobilise, and also a real ability to go into the detail too. So quite analytical and into the depth of all things kind of eSIM and digital and user experience design, products, etc. So I think it's going to be a really good session today, and we'll tap into some of that, both broad strategic thinking and then also the detail as well. So just to touch a little bit about the subject for today, so Superapps, and maybe just to start, I think most of our listeners would have a good understanding about what the concept of Superapp is, but I'll just give a little bit of an introduction to set the scene.
I'm excited to hear this, to be honest.
What is a Superapp? Yeah.
Yes, because I think the term can be extremely wide and confusing. I think the word is, we're lucky that we have a word that is very sane. We most likely have a word that sounds like what it means. I forgot the real naming of such a word. But the word Superapp, everybody can instantly relate to. But I think the spectrum is very broad. So I'll be excited to hear your definition, Hamish, or the definition we'll be using today, maybe.
You've teed me up to fail spectacularly there. I'll probably not get the definition right. But look, it's really true. It's really true. And I think for me I generally understand what Superapp means, but what does that mean in terms of features and user experience? So what can a user do underneath? And that's where there's some ambiguity for me. But to summarize in my words, so a Superapp is really a combination of a variety of different apps under one digital ecosystem and through one digital mobile app. And so really the idea is that you're combining a whole bunch of services and features and products into one ecosystem, and all of those products and services are relevant to a specific user's needs or a target segment, And some examples might be, you might look at banking, for example. Let's use Revolut as an example, which we've talked quite a lot about in different ways at Mobilise over the last kind of 2 years or so, 18 months or so. But they started as a fintech app with, I think, in the early days, relatively straightforward features and services, which was around money transfer and peer-to-peer financial services. And they went into things like FX, and now they've really broadened out into what I would classify to be a traditional super app, which is they've got a bunch of third-party services that exist there. And I think predominantly around the international user segment, whether it be travelers or diaspora that are living away from their home country and sending funds back home. But you've got things there like hotel bookings. You've got the ability to purchase roaming packages for your connectivity. You can obviously do money transfer. You can do payments. You can all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just to summarize back up into the definition of super app, it's really the combination of multiple third-party services under one banner, meeting a customer's specific needs. And there's a whole bunch of different, we'll go further into the different variations of super apps that are out there today. But it's a really growing, it's a growing space. Just to throw out some of the statistics that we'd pulled together before this podcast. It's growing quickly. So based on Grandview research, in 2022, the global super apps market was worth 61.3 billion. And depending on who you talk to or which sources you refer to, it's really expected to grow quite significantly to 426 billion by 2030, which seems a huge jump. And then 592 billion by 2033, based on unpack Group and Alliad Market Research, some of the statistics that they've pulled together. So I think it's really interesting. It's tapping into a customer demand, which is, I don't want to have, multiple different apps or services that I'm interacting with. There's a big theme in the marketplace today about subscription fatigue, not just in telecoms, but in different markets. And so the concept of a super app, one, consolidates into a nice user experience, a whole lot of different relevant products and services for a customer, but it also adds that other layer of, overcoming subscription fatigue, which, even today I have a bunch of super apps myself. Revolut is one, but Uber, others as well. But still, I must have 15, 20 different subscriptions that I have emailing me every month or every other day, telling me about different things. So it's tiring. But
can I just comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So very early on, you said the right word. You said relevant, because up in my head, I would be very scared of starting to build something or wanting to build something that were to be a super app. So relevance is the key. And then I think another word that springs to mind when somebody tells me the word super app is also, so you've said it in many other words, but really it's services you appreciate, that you want to use, that you don't mind paying for. And I don't know how to say it better than you have some kind of appreciation for the super app because it's really helpful, it's really convenient, and it really helps you in your way or in your life. And those relevance and the whole thing about appreciating the services you're offered, I think that's key.
Totally.
From business perspective, you can see the idea on philosophical basis, like in the combo generally. And we're always discussing this while having our R&D meetings and roadmap meetings. And we have this example of the burger. What would be the burger? What would be the fries? And what would be the cola or the drink here? And from this perspective, it makes us understand more and more why we need to bundle things together. And what would make a really good super app or not. And the main key would be the relevance. And from product perspective, I would say the seamless user experience, like for instance, having one wallet for multiple services, one orchestration, how the APIs speak. As a user, I don't want to feel disconnected. I don't feel like I'm just having one interface with different tabs and each tab represent a different or a separate isolated app. So I get this feeling that it's just a bunch of features stitched together, rather than, oh yeah, this is a complete super app. It kind of understand what I really need. And that's why even we can identify the relevant combos from the non-relevant combos. And we can see also in the industry that some of the service providers try to bundle some services that didn't go well together. And some others have added some services, and it was a new vertical, then it became a dominant vertical in their selling.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let me just ask you guys to summarize what you mentioned there. Like from your perspective, what are the essential characteristics that define a super app? I think there we've talked about features that are relevant. We've talked about user experience. What other things do we think? What kind of features would you expect to see that are important?
Usability, good value for money, appreciating the services that you get. And I may come back to it later in this podcast, but I think one of the things that I really appreciate about Revolut is that how many things they're actually throwing at you without charging for it. You get relevant services for free just by having a Revolut bank account. That's something really new. That also sort of is a fight against the subscription fatigue that you mentioned, which is a very real thing. So giving me something that I really need, but not charging me extra for it, that really works in my book.
Yeah. And I think you've touched on a very important point where the cultural acceptance of this idea itself. This is a main driver for whether the app will proceed or not, because in Asia, like we've seen like very good examples, like one app for all. Yeah, this worked very well, but in other countries or continents, it didn't work very well. People weren't ready for it. So the culture itself plays a very, very important role. It also depends, are you going to be the first provider to have the super app in this market, or are you competing with other super app providers? And this also will fall under the cultural part or the user acceptance for this kind of experience.
It's a good segue into the next section of the podcast, which is kind of the origin and evolution of super apps. And yeah, you're right to say that Asia has been certainly very successful with super apps. And we've got a statistic here from iMark Group again, which is Asia Pacific currently dominates the super apps market, holding 45 to 50% of revenue. Just in that region. And another little stat on top of that is Android is about 60 to 70% of the super app market share, which would correspond, I think, in Asia. iOS is not as prominent, I don't believe, generally as Android. So I think that would correlate quite well, just because super apps are more prevalent in that market, that it's going to lead towards Android. But what's really interesting in what you guys mentioned there is, yeah, Asia's kind of considered the birthplace, I think, of super apps. And so what do you think specifically that, I mean, I've got some thoughts that kind of made that environment more conducive to super apps. One of the kind of topics that I've heard in the past related to this is that in those markets, a lot of, in terms of the evolution of mobile technology and fixed broadband technology, fixed broadband didn't reach penetrations in the way that it did, like in Europe, for example, or in the United States. So the user behavior in the United States and Europe was more the online behavior was more at desktop or laptop to start with, whereas in the Asian markets, fixed line broadband penetration didn't reach the same level, so they kind of hopped over fixed and went straight to mobile, and that's part of the reason why you see a much higher engagement and usage of e-commerce apps and mobile services, which then also leads into into super apps. But What are you guys thoughts? Maybe Mal, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts in terms of why those markets have been more successful to date, in terms of their penetration of super apps?
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Hamish, and I might add also another perspective related to the same concept, which would be, let's say, for instance, Grab in Asia, like ride-hailing wallet. You can see that the different social architecture, in the country, it opens an opportunity, like for, let's say, most of the people doesn't have bank account, let's say, or in a social class, there is a huge segment that they don't have a bank account. So having a wallet, having an app that I can do the day-to-day activity, I can pay my stuff, I can even exchange and buy stuff from my app, that would open a new realm for me. Even if this app is getting more credible in terms of the country and the government, and I can even apply for a loan or apply for whatever I'm doing in the country, but it kind of identify me as a credible person, then this is another need. It's covering this gap, and that's why when you go to a different market, you wouldn't find the same need for the users. So the acquisition wouldn't be the same. Still, there will be an acquisition because there is a value proposition at the end. It's not one value proposition, but the metrics are really different because also the segment and the quantity and the quality, like all of these aspects, it does really shape the experience. And that's why I see in Asia there were some very, very clever apps in bundling. So they're not even opening any verticals. They are working specifically in this vertical because one vertical, and if we can all agree that the fintech vertical is a key opener to a lot of services, because once you implemented this, once you have a wallet or your own currency inside the app, then you can do a lot of stuff. Yeah, you can even use the main feature of the app. Let's say it's ride hailing, or you can pay utility, or you can buy food, or you can do whatever. So I think, yeah, that's a main driver. What do you think?
Yeah, also the lack of a existing alternative, let's say it like that, or platform. So from Europe, having had computers and PCs and laptops throughout my evolution on the internet and services, I have a trust relationship with my Windows-enabled laptop when I need to do banking. But not having that option because you are unbanked, there's no fixed internet, you can't afford a PC or a laptop anyway, then the mobile phone provides the only real alternative. So you grow up with a different level of trust in the services. So I see my son using his mobile for things where I go, I'm just going to do this on my laptop to have a proper screen and make sure I log in and do everything correct. But the younger generations don't really care about that laptop. They trust the mobile, they use the mobile. Their eyesight is better than mine by now. But it's also because some people are unbanked, some people, mobile money, people were transferring money on mobiles 10 years before. There was a lack of a solid alternative. So that's, of course, how the regions developed differently. And in Europe, can be perceived as old-fashioned, straightforward, because things don't develop here. Also because there's an existing or established market that would have to be written off or cancelled if you wanted to really launch something new and grand in no time. But because there's a lack in other regions, then things become popular a lot quicker than in Europe.
Yeah, consumer behavior is very, very, very hard to change, isn't it? When it's bedded in, which kind of e-commerce has been in front of a computer, let's say, it's just very generally like that for many, many years in Europe or in, North America perhaps, or, even where I'm from, Australia. It's the behavior is embedded, and it's very hard to change it, even if there is just as good, if not better alternatives. Like purchasing via mobile. Certainly does feel like it's I mean, using my own personal experience, it's funny, psychologically I feel like it's safer to purchase online. Because I'm running these scenarios in my head. I feel like it's safer to purchase via a laptop or a desktop. But I purchase quite a lot on mobile. But there's this weird thing where I still feel like I'm more comfortable if I'm sitting in front of a PC, in front of a screen, and I'm sitting in my house, and I'm just like, it's a weird perception, isn't it?
If you're doing it from mobile, even like if you like, oh my God, I'm compromising on this, but even inside of you have this guilt. Yeah, we have been this generation like, oh my God, it's financial operation. Like I need to do it from my laptop and have a stable connection.
Yeah. I would still, if I'm doing like a big bank transfer, I would do it from a desktop or a laptop in my house or in the office or something like that. But technically speaking, it's got absolutely no bearing on security whatsoever. But it's just interesting. Yeah, it's a behavioral thing.
I consider myself just a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to it, because I can feel it, but I really should engage more and just let all my fears go and jump in.
And this is even another idea. Like if you're not doing it, like there is also another marketing campaign to convince you, like, oh my God, you're so outdated. How are you living with us? Oh my God, like you're dinosaur. You're not using it. Oh my God, don't tell anyone. So it's tricky. Yeah.
It raises the good point. Like when we talk about behavioral, patterns across different generations. I've got my mum is staying with me at the moment from Australia, and she's 78. I better get that right. Sorry, Mum, if I've got it wrong and listening. I mean, the gap for her is huge. Like I would consider probably all of us here to be relatively tech savvy, if not very tech savvy. And we're still having these behavioral hesitations about using mobile. I mean, she is way behind the curve, and it's she struggles to operate her iPad or her phone. She's constantly frustrated, but the whole world is moving towards these mobile app services, and it's a huge gap that's opening up. She struggles to just kind of do basic administrative things in her day-to-day. Back in the day, she would have gone into the bank branch, spoken to the manager, and said I've got a problem with this, or she would have gone to the newsagent and purchased, bought the latest newspaper. It's like, these things are happening, these shifts are happening, but the gap is widening between the generations as well, and not to mention those parts of society that don't have good access to the internet or these types of digital environments. For me, it's the most important thing in any super app strategy or any app development strategy. It's such a difficult art form is user experience design. It seems easy. I think that's the thing from the outside. It's like, oh, well, we use these apps all the time. Surely it's easy to build an app that's got user experience. But actually, there's so much that goes into understanding good user experience design. And when you look at just the complexity of the features and products and journeys that can exist in some of these super apps like Grab or Uber or Revolut, there is so much going on there. And this principle of less is more, fight that urge to crowd the user journey, to crowd the user experience with different things here and there, and you can do this and you can do that, and just make those flows really simple and intuitive and overall hassle-free. It's hard. It's not easy to do. But for me, I think Superapp is a success or a failure based on its user experience. Obviously, you've got to have all these other things. Like you've got to have value for money, you've got to have good pricing, you've got to have good products, they've got to be relevant. But if it's not presented to the user in a way that is user-friendly and encourages them or entices them to use it, it doesn't mean anything,
Yeah. Exactly. So you're not just cluttering stuff on the home screen. It has to be relevant. It has to be discoverable. And by discoverable here, it doesn't mean that it's visible. Basically, if you're me a feature and it's not included in my flow, I wouldn't go there, even though it's in front of my face every time I log into the app. But where is the scenario where I, interact with this feature, which is the flows, the need, whether to put it here or put it there. And back in the days, people used to have this way to measure the how good is the UX is to measure it by clicks. But recently it has been proven wrong, because 3 clicks might be a better experience than 1 click if I'm taking you step by step and I'm educating you while reaching this point, instead of going through 1 click, but I lost you on the bounce rate. So yes, and with super apps, this is becoming more complex on the product designers, because you need to introduce a lot of features. Let's say, it doesn't have to be a lot, or it's not measured based on quantity, but let's say you have multiple features and you need to convince your users that they can, or basically they need to use all of these features from one place. How can you build a narrative? How can you convince your users that this is better, especially if they are coming from a different background? And if we're talking about telecom here, okay, how can you convince your user to spend more time in the self-care app, which wasn't the experience before? I just go in, I check my usage, I renew my plan, that's it. And that's why it become like, okay, I'll start adding bills, utilities. Okay, this is not enough for you. Let's add entertainment. Let's add, let's integrate with loyalty programs. Let's integrate with subscription for multimedia like Netflix or any streaming activity. And then they keep measuring the time that people spend on their app. And that's why we found a new notion or form on the telecom apps. It's becoming more, I would say, something like engaging.
I don't think we really appreciate all the effort that goes into creating a good user experience in an app. I think we just browse through, and if it works, then we're really happy. But we're more happy to throw out an app if it's not to our liking. But speaking to our colleagues who works with this, I'm blown away about how many assumptions and how wrong I am when I think I know anything about how to create a good user experience. So I think it's really an underappreciated art, creating a usable.
And that is very good. And actually, I think it's unfair when you say about yourself that I cannot say whether this is a good UX or not, but you can represent a user group.
Yes.
You can represent your segment. And that's why I don't understand when someone come and say this UX is bad. Bad for whom? and why bad? And define bad. Like, this is a very big word. And sometimes you find people come to you. We're talking about non-tech or non-product people, like just normal user. I really like this app. What do you like about them? Do they have the best prices? No, but I really like this app. I feel comfortable using it. And they don't even know how to describe why they like the app, but they just can say like, it just makes me feel calm. Things like this, and it's very tricky, but you can see that it's all. And as much as you can understand your users, the segment group, then you can tailor the UX. So people are they think that Spotify is the best app for music. People using YouTube Music, they think YouTube Music is the best app for music.
We know it is. We know it is.
Exactly. And this is something also like it's worth thinking about, like, why will people make such, because when you go to Spotify and YouTube, they're very, very similar to each other, but it's just subtle stuff addressing specific user segment, addressing a specific age group, specific demographics, and of course the big competition between the social class. Like Apple tends to be like more highly recognized for higher social levels and so on. This plays also a role in the competition.
Interesting. Shout out to Madalena, who does a lot of the user experience design, and let's categorize it broadly like that, because it's a lot more than just that. But she does all of that for Mobilise with her colleague Faye as well. And there's a really good podcast actually earlier on in our a series of podcasts. It's episode number 4. If anyone wants to go back and have a look at that, they talk about brand identity there. But actually, brand identity is probably, could be considered to be quite different from user experience design, but it's actually all part of the discipline of creating, the art and discipline of creating good digital user experiences that actually starts all the way at the start of, what is my brand identity? Like what am I trying to achieve? What are my messages? And then, look and feel, and then that flows down into, the messaging and user experience design, and all the way down to flows and different features in the app. So yeah, it's the dark arts. It's the dark arts of user experience design, and hugely important. Like I said, probably in my opinion, the most important thing in Superapps is creating that user experience that will keep bringing customers back. Let's jump to the next section, and just wanted to talk a little bit about Superapps within telecoms. And let me set the scene by saying, I think like telecoms, on the one hand, by and large, not all telecoms, but by and large, telecoms companies, particularly mobile operators, are struggling with, revenue growth. They're struggling with margin squeeze. A lot of them have got poor NPS scores in terms of customer satisfaction. So they've got, a need to evolve into maybe a new type of business model, which could be perhaps like a lifestyle player that's focused around digital. And in particular, core telecom services like mobile voice and data are being commoditized. We see that more and more with unlimited plans and more semi-unlimited data offerings as well. But at the same time, it feels like huge opportunity. Telcos, huge customer bases, talking about tier 1 telcos, often tens of millions of subscribers on their base, depending on where you are in the world, can be hundreds of millions of users on their base. So huge, captive audience, large user base, very high frequency of touch points as well. So, most people will use their phone every day, if not many, many times a day, for calls and messages and data sessions, etc., paying bills, topping up. A huge captive audience, high frequency of touch points, a lot of infrastructure at the back end that lends towards like a super app ecosystem, things like billing relationships, for example. They've got customer service relationships as well. But I think we've not really seen the telco industry excel in this super app space as of yet. So considering these things, maybe I'll flip this one to you. Considering these problems that the industry is maybe trying to overcome, just the general margin squeeze of telecoms, with the opportunities that they have around such large customer bases, captive audiences, a lot of touch points, why haven't telcos succeeded more in this super app space than maybe what we're seeing in other industries?
In my experience, they don't want to take the risk. They are scared of the risk of venturing into something new, which is super sad. But there's a focus on short-term profit, and 3 years is too long to start something in the telco business. They don't have 3 years. They suffer from shareholders that need reporting quarterly. So if this quarter's numbers looks bad, then there's consequences right away. This is what I've seen in many telcos, or it's my conviction as of today, that they are just not ready to do long-term investments to venture outside of what they do really well. Having said that, they do certain things really, really well, and that gives them the comfort, and that gives them the belief that this is good enough, that we can actually, if we keep trucking at this, we're really good at this, we can really trim our network, we can really become a utility where data just flows to our subscribers, and we're really good at it. And they keep doing that really well, and then they can see that they're actually making decent money from time to time from that. And that, I think that stops them from really being forced to venture out.
Interesting. Yeah, it's true. There's a rationalization going on, and there has been for several years now, of the business model, isn't there? I mean, you see it here in the UK with Three and Vodafone merging, or depending on which way you look at it, acquiring, merging. We've seen that, in the States as well. The traditional business model maybe isn't presenting the same margin opportunity as it used to. So third and fourth operators in a market will consolidate together to create those economies of scale.
Yeah.
But that's efficiency. What they're doing, just to your point, they're creating efficiency in their operating models so that they can, do the M&O network model really, really well. But
also it also boils a little bit down to ownership. So who owns the M&Os? And I think it's been a long time since anybody has bought up a group of M&Os or a single M&O and said, we're really going to invest in this operation and we're going to branch out and do something new. So I don't think there's any money going into the M&O space that has the ambition of really going outside of what the traditional telcos do.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with one of your first comments as well. It's the attitude today for a lot of telcos is very short term. The perspective is very short term. So it's, I've got my results each quarter, and I need to make sure that I'm performing on an individual level towards those results, and that really shortens the perspective of a lot of executives in terms of how they're willing to invest. Good digital.
I don't necessarily want to point fingers at that. I mean, it's if you're running a solid business, no problem.
Why risk anything?
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily pointing fingers, but having ambition and seeing the reach they have, the amount of invoice relationship they have with consumers and with businesses, how core their services are to people these days, then it makes me go, that there should be more ambition in you guys, that you should be willing to do more.
Yeah. It's interesting, just to, Mo, I'll flip it to you in a second to answer the same question with your insights, but it's interesting, there's the layer above, which is the MVNO layer, I guess, let's say it like that sits on top of the M&O network. And really interesting to see in the last few weeks, I think it was, that Airalo, which, is the travel eSIM provider, has raised another round of funding of 250 million, I think it was, which valued the company at over $1 billion. I mean, amazing, and just huge credit to that whole team for what they've achieved there. But the point I was going to make is I don't remember seeing any news like that about a early stage, let's call them early stage. They've been around a long time, Airalo, and the CEO's slogged it out to get to where he is. I remember reading about him a long time ago. But, in the telco space, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. It happens a lot in the tech space, where you hear, particularly now with AI, where you hear of companies just going stratospheric in a very short period of time. But you don't hear of that in the telco space, So maybe the answer is that, the telcos stay as the efficient pipes, utilities. They continue to have relationships for sure, direct with consumer, but there's this whole other layer that sits on top, which brings the innovation, which brings the maybe the digital view on the customer journeys. But Mo, let me reframe the question again for you. So why do you think the telcos haven't necessarily been particularly successful in creating super apps?
I would, my first answer, it's like you've said, I see still a gap between the tech and telecom. So people who works in telecom with tech mindset, this is where they can exceed. And Airalo is a good example for that. They started as a tech company, as a product company. They didn't tell themselves we're a telecom company. They said, okay, we're a product company and we're playing in the telecom field. How can we disrupt this industry? And they have seen the opportunity. They have worked on the technology. They are also compatible with very specific product, and they are focusing into it. One of the things that they have added into the market, the modularity behind, their back end, multiple connectivity providers, flexible pricing. And last year, because I was going for a trip and it was very good compared to also our app, it's very, very good, has all of the core features. And then I installed it a couple of months ago. And the change was huge. And in terms of features, you wouldn't find any new significant feature. But in terms of the UX, they understood a lot about their users. Everything has info. So any field that has info, this is because you need to do that because of that. This is because you need to do that because of that. If you want to do that, make sure that you don't delete the eSIM profile because you cannot install it later. Make sure you do this. Okay, now even for the phases of the life cycle of the customer, like sign up, registration, you have a certain notifications, certain journey, then you've purchased your first product, then they start to resell the second product, and they kind of start also convincing you. This is in terms of how they make acquisition and retention. Of course, they have referral codes, promo codes, all the normal things that any product would have it, but the telecom doesn't think this way. When you open a telecom app for any of the biggest operators in the world, like Voda, Orange, or whatever, compare it with any other app in your phone, you will find like it's a bit, you cannot find the right word, but you feel that, okay, it's a bit relatively older, outdated, less sticky, less intuitive, less something. Even though, okay, we have face recognition, we have AI, we have XYZ, but no, I like the other app. I like Airlo more, and I trust them more because they seem to live in the same world. Let's say, in instance, can I pay by XYZ blockchain, or whatever, any kind of payment, any wallet? Yeah, we support it in Airlo. Do you support? How do you offer customer care? Because it's a bit, and I'm talking about elder generation, because this is a very good job they have made, that they are not only attracting the younger generation because this is their world. No, they are also attracting elder generation and making them feel you come to us, and this is much easier than buying a roaming package from your provider. Even though buying a roaming package from my provider, I would just go into the same app that I've already have on my phone and purchase this. They convinced me to go and install their app, find a referral code, because it's very, very tempting. Or, if you're a group of friends, you can share some referral codes, and then they have a lot of tempting, features and methodologies to attract new customers. And I think this is where they pitch to the investors, and the investors, they have seen the curve and they can anticipate even the future, because also they're collecting the rest of new joiners in the market, because they have seen the value here. So I would say definitely the tech mindset, the agility, the way they do development, the way they do UX, the way they do modularity, you wouldn't feel any difference in anything. Although it's not still a super app, but it's a very successful app in terms of taking something outside of, the telecom, let's say, a bit rusty environment, and polish it, or pave the way for how the new telecom should operate.
Interesting. I haven't looked at the Airalo app in a while, and it's well, mainly because I use travel apps that are using the Hero platform. Our customers that are using the Hero platform tend to favour those. But I have used it quite a lot in the past. Probably the last time I used it was maybe 12 months ago, or a bit less than that, maybe. But those points that you make are really interesting, Mo. And the fact that they've now included a lot of instructions throughout the app about what different things mean, it feels like that's talking to a bigger problem to solve in the industry, particularly maybe around eSIM, is it's still relatively new, you know, and people need to understand all the way through the steps of the journey what everything means, you know. So there's an educational process that needs to be injected into those user journeys to make sure that people understand what they're doing and if they've got questions as they go through. Whereas in like social media apps, for example, those journeys are well understood now, aren't they? And it's very intuitive because they've been around. It's a very well-trodden path. So yeah, that's interesting. And it is still relatively new, you know, it's a relatively new technology in the consumer telecom space, isn't it, eSIM? And not to say that Airolo is, you know, their instructions throughout their application is just around eSIM, but I'm sure it's got a lot to do with it. But they're educating their customers a lot, it sounds like, through the journey.
Yeah, and you can
just a
still,
thought.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a thought on, I mean, you said something interesting more about the MNOs not being super apps. Now that I think about it, of course, they don't just cater for one segment, they cater for everybody. Everybody has a telco provider. So creating one giant super app is very difficult because they have a broad range of different customers. They have business customers, they have consumers, and the consumers is very, very spread out across 8 groups.
It's not a niche.
It's not at all a niche.
Customers where it's easy to hone in on a set of features that will be relevant. Yeah.
And I just had the thought, maybe that's also the reason why, let's say, Facebook is not a super app, because it's just a big spread. It's not easy to do something for all in those large user groups. So that could be part of the reason why we don't see super apps coming from MNOs or from Facebook even.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
This is what I like, because I was going to say that you can tell that this is a sign of early expansion, making the user experience more inclusive. It means that they are expanding. They need to attract bigger segments rather than being very specific to a niche or a specific target audience. And of course, yes, this is a challenge that telecom already have. But again, they can learn from the tech products here. And again, long story short, it would be the mechanism about, if we're talking development or product teams in telecom and product teams in product company, the mechanism, the mindset, the way the teams work, even the persona of the developers and the persona of engineers, it differs. The persona of the product team, it differs. The structure of the corporate, it's different than structure of a new product company, even if it's bigger in size and scale. And you can call it a corporate from a scale perspective. In terms of operations, processes, the way they revolve around the product, not as a product is a derivative or it's just an outcome of several processes. By making the product the center of event, this allows them to be more orientated around the product, to compensate the product team, to even be able to think with a mindset related to the product roadmap, not the company roadmap. And there is a huge difference here, especially when we're talking about telecom. And most of you guys, you know, telecom, a lot of verticals, a lot of processes, and, you know, tier 1 MNOs, when they come to work with us, they do acknowledge this. Okay, guys, you have flexible process. You can deliver this faster. You can deliver this in shorter time. Because we're adopting the tech mindset. We understand that we work in the telecom, but we define ourselves like this. We're your software provider, we're your vendor, we're your something like this.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
In that defense, the telcos that have triple play or they have done well in bundling in the digital TV services as well, I think, in their subscriptions. So I think many people who have a mobile subscription where they also have Disney or whatever they have bundled in there. I think that's a good example of them doing something that's actually smelling a little bit like a super app.
smelling, indeed. Bundling, it's a good point. I mean, if there is any reason, any reason to push into a super app type approach is, it's quite well known, the more services you bundle together and to sell to one customer, the customer lifetime value goes through the roof, churn goes down and customer lifetime value goes through the roof. So but I think you guys have touched on something that's interesting there a little bit. But one of the things that I think is a challenge for the telcos is the skill set to push into, super app and digital development, user experience. And a lot of MNOs do have really good digital capabilities within their businesses, but a lot don't either. And over time, a lot of the focus in terms of building skill sets internally has been around network capabilities, billing, OSS, BSS, provisioning, spectrum management, like kind of nuts and bolts telco stuff. And, we were on a RFP call the other day with a very, very large MNO group. And what was quite evident, I don't know how many people were on that call, there must have been about 15 from their side, something like that. What was very evident on that call is there wasn't anyone that really was pushing into the user experience side of the solution that we were presenting. It was all very much kind of techno stacks in the background, DP Plus and billing and OCS and, multi-IMSI was in there a little bit. But in terms of digital user experience design, which is the fundamental part of a travel eSIM product, there wasn't any questions that came about that, and it was almost like people were veering away from it or at least focusing on their core domains. So I think, one of the big obstacles for telcos is a lot of them don't have this skill set in-house. And it leads me into the next question, I think, which next section of the podcast is, if you guys let me ask it like this. So, Per, I'll put it to you. So, if you were a CEO or executive of a large MNO and you had a decision, the strategy team, marketing team, product, etc., have all said, "Yeah, we want to push into a Superapps strategy." What would your approach be? Build a super app ecosystem, or buy a super app ecosystem?
I would hire Boston Consulting Group to give me the answer, of course.
Insurance policy. Yeah, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM, as they say.
No, it's my perception, at least, that telcos have decided that building apps is not their core business, and that's a shame. They should have said that years ago, that we need to have the app is the communication channel to our users. We need to own that, and we need to be in control of that. And at least their own carrier app, they should own and control and develop themselves. It's really about owning the control and your communication to your subscribers. So I don't think many do, but if some do, then I think they've done the right thing by building it themselves and having a dedicated team managing this. And then,
interesting.
If there's something telcos are good at, it's doing an RFP and doing a procurement process and making sure they get the right product at the right price. They've been doing that for 25 years, 30 years. They're very, very good at it. They have teams dedicated to only doing RFPs and getting proposals in and negotiation and not getting caught having not covered an area or a support part of the contract and so forth. So they're very good at sourcing partners. So finding the right partner and to help them out, building the app part themselves, though.
Interesting. Related, what do you think are the biggest technical and/or organizational hurdles that telcos face in creating super apps?
I think first the decision, build or adopt. And I would add another option, which would be hybrid, something as we do in Mobilise and with our Hero platform. because realistically speaking, you won't be able to rebuild everything from scratch. Sometimes it's not a smart idea to reinvent the wheel. And other times you would find other people who started on something you wanted to do, and they have done a lot of innovation in that field. And this can be really applied in some of the AI verticals. But I think the main challenge, again, as we agreed, it's the UX. If the UX is cluttered, then you don't have a super app. Super apps, it's all about orchestration, not aggregation. So if you have a good orchestration layer, you orchestrate between your APIs, modularity, UX. I think these three keywords are the main drivers for success in the super apps.
It could be interesting to check, let's say, top 20 or top 50 super apps to see if anybody has an outsourced app development team. If you have a really successful super app, would you not be building it yourself? I think you would want to own that.
I would have my own tech team. So a good example, for instance, Spotify, since we spoke about Spotify. Spotify, they have a squad per feature. So you open the search feature, it has a full squad to work on the search feature only. And they have discovered things in the search algorithm, and they open new realms in the environment. They really upgraded the search functionality for everyone. So this goes very well with your thought per. Definitely, ideally, I would go with that. Yeah.
The app, the super apps or app providers, app VNOs that we've been talking to about integrating our eSIM service into their apps, they have certainly made no mistake that they don't need our assistance for that. Their app is their domain. That's their livelihood. It's their everything. It's where they generate all their revenue from. So they certainly own the app in-house and will continue to do so. And they will choose which services to integrate into their app, and they will do it themselves.
It's interesting. I mean, it's relatively young industry within telco as well. I guess it is and isn't for those telcos that have been successful. Like, let's say, Rakuten has got an incredibly strong ecosystem. Maybe not so joined together from a digital user experience perspective, but amazing ecosystem. You've got Jio in India. I'm not sure how successful their super app ecosystem is. I think they've been incredibly successful just based on their core services. But yeah, it's a young industry, and there's I guess there's probably different models for different telcos. Like Uber, Revolut, it's all in-house, and it's very hard to outsource the culture of what the business wants to achieve. It's got to be so deep into the DNA to get it right that it's hard to outsource that to an external company that has got a different culture and then of course very difficult to control it. But I think there's parts within the ecosystem that are, in my opinion, to buy in. Things like aggregators, for example, like an aggregation of different third-party services, a little bit like what we do with Hero into the orchestration layer. We've got various different third-party services that are tied in there. We've got the virtual numbers, we've got the voice over IP, you've got Wi-Fi as well. Other things on the roadmap too, eSIMs obviously there as well, and so from that perspective, you're looking at the orchestration layer and the plumbing of the super app ecosystem, and not necessarily the user experience at the front end, which, yes, 100% is so core to the business's DNA and culture that you want to make sure that you've got full control over that. It's really interesting. I'm just looking at the time, and it's been such a healthy debate that we've missed a couple of the topics that we wanted to cover in the in the session, but I'll jump to kind of something like the second last section, which I think is quite interesting. It's more about the future outlook and what's next for super apps, either generally or in telco in particular. So if you guys were to put your stare into your crystal balls and look into the future, Mo, where would you see Superapps in telecoms in say 5 or 10 years time from now?
I think I'm already seeing this. At least you can see if we're starting from, since we're talking from telecom perspective, we're already seeing a lot of brands started selling traveler eSIMs. So you can tell that this is becoming the future of the super apps, where the telecom is becoming a derivative rather than I think you've already wrote an article about this. Maybe I'm influenced by this article, but I do believe, and you can really see it, how the market is moving and how the brands are moving. The big monster of AI that is eating everyone and everything alive. Of course, it's gonna affect the future of the super apps, but I'm really keen to see how things can be more seamless, feels like one big operation or one big user flow. For instance, like in KYC, how can we make this much easier by AI or by other ways to confirm the identity? How we can have a seamless app of having this KYC experience with eSIM, with Vibe, with fintech as well. And we were already trying to bring this to the market, our app with the fintech functionalities, like exchange, blockchain, money exchange, or stock. That would be also a good stuff, because basically once you're having one wallet like this, you can implement many features. So I guess connectivity would be one of the stuff, mainly selling data and any related service to this, because you can use even the KYC or the eSIM to be your personal identification. You can be identified with your phone as your global identity or your global password. So between the identity, the different types of connectivity, this is where I see the feature of the super apps, especially speaking of eSIM, because this is a digital product of the telecom. So I'm already seeing this being included in many apps, like the idea of the wallet back in the days.
I mean, it's really interesting time, isn't it? And if there's anything, if there's a trend that is evolving in the telecom space around super apps, it's kind of the inverse, is that telecoms connectivity is being embedded in non-telco digital ecosystems, Revolut, Klarna. Yeah.
The telcos have been saying to themselves for so many years that they don't want to just become a bit pipe, but they've talked themselves into becoming bit pipes anyway. So what's happening now is that their super lean and super efficient bit pipes are now being resold in other super apps. So telco is being brought into the other super apps. And it doesn't really matter either way. It's cool. But for the future of super apps, I see telco being brought into other super apps much more than any other service going into the telco super apps, unfortunately. But I think more creative people and more dynamic companies will be doing the integration of telco service into their super apps, which is great. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that approach.
It's interesting. Yeah. The obvious challenge for the MNOs, which I think is what they're all crapping themselves about, is it's becoming so easy to find alternative services with eSIM. You can find alternative operators that you can use. I mean, I just recently transferred to a new iPhone 17 from my old iPhone 14, which is like light years ahead of the iPhone 14, the iPhone 17. But I had some troubles doing the transfer, so I just downloaded on both devices. So at one point, I had my EE subscription wasn't available on either device, so I downloaded a travel eSIM for the UK on both devices from different service providers, and was able just to get connected like that. But I think the thing that the MNOs are crapping themselves about is that it just is that much easier, and they're losing, their stranglehold on the customer relationship is is waning, is it's diminishing. And you go from having, I don't know, let's say theoretically a £15 ARPU with a direct relationship with a customer to an £8 ARPU from a wholesale perspective, which is probably £8 more profitable. But when the whole industry is built around average revenue per user KPIs and revenue, it's not a good prospect.
I need to add a small comment to that MNOs have been crapping themselves over anything for the past 25 years. Everything has been seen as a threat. I think it's a particular disease within telcos that they see everything digital as a threat to their business model. The fact is that they are super ready to rearrange themselves and to organize themselves and to be more efficient and to adapt to the market terms. They're really, really good at this, and they're really good at finding ways of being more efficient. So whatever the challenge, whatever the hurdle has been, they have overcome all of it. And this is much more an opportunity for upselling than it is a threat to them. They're going to make telco services available in more places via more channels. Of course, they're always looking at, but wait a minute, we have a penetration of 200% in every single country. Yes, but that hasn't stopped anybody from making money yet. They've just made more and more money over the years. So I'm not really scared on their behalf of anything. They will adapt and they will find a way forward to have the services in more places.
Interesting. Very good. Well, I'm gonna lean towards wrapping it up now, guys. I think if I can just summarize where we got to as some of the key factors to think about with a super app strategy is user experience design. I think we hovered around that subject a lot. That the key success factor for any super app strategy is that the user experience has to be excellent, and it has to be engaging, and it's got to want to make the customers come back for more. And unfortunately, that's, I think, something in the telco industry that is not a strength. Digital user experience design. There are exceptions, of course, but by and large, our focus and investment in personnel and people and skills has been more network as opposed to digital. But guys, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time. You guys in particular, but we're all very busy. It's been really, really insightful discussion. And Per, thanks so much. Mo, thank you so much. I would steer people towards the Mobilise blogs page. We have a white paper up on the website there if anyone wanted to learn a little bit more about Mobilise's view on super apps, and put a lot of work into a white paper called Why Telecoms Should Become Super Apps and How to Do It. You can download that from the website. And of course, you can find our Mobilise podcasts on the website, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But thanks again to the guests. Thanks everyone for listening, and we look forward to the next episode. Thanks, Per. Thanks, Mo.